how can I use ChatGPT to be more effective in my time and manage my time with the value-adding activities in my business?
All right, I'm going to answer your question in a weird way.
Please.
All right. Like my father, I'm a workaholic.
Uh-huh.
Historically, I'm a workaholic. And if I didn't get enough work done in the day, I can't sleep at night because my body hasn't received its dose of work. Okay, you sound like you know what I'm talking about. All right, in the last 2 months, I've started dance classes. In the last 2 months, I go back into boxing. In the last 2 months, I learned to start playing pool with my nephews. In the last 2 months, I've been to the cinema more times than in the last 2 years. I have my kids coming to spend 3 weeks with me. From next week, actually, they arrive on Saturday to spend 3 weeks with me.
Wow.
Right? And I'm excited to have them. I'm so excited to have them.
How?
Because the way in which my time is being, and I'm sleeping at nighttime, right? Why? Because I am now getting more done. I'm now getting more done in one day than I used to get done in 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
What are those tasks that you were spending a lot and ChatGPT helped you?
Everything.
I want a good life, filled with highlights, and I want someone like you. I want paradise with the sunset, if I could only be with you.
So we talked a little bit about the personal development that we can use from ChatGPT, but I'm so intrigued to speak a little bit on the entrepreneurship. How ChatGPT can help me as an entrepreneur in all aspects in my life and business.
All right, so the first thing, what's the job of the entrepreneur? The job of the entrepreneur is to figure things out, right? That's the job of the entrepreneur, is that he doesn't have a boss, or she doesn't have a boss, right? Entrepreneurs don't have bosses. They are their own bosses. That means the responsibility of figuring things out sits on their heads. And this means if we go back to the pre-AI era or the pre-ChatGPT era, what did they have to do? They had to go online, they had to go to all of these resources, they had to speak to mentors, they had to speak to consultants, they had to speak to friends, they had to speak to all of these different people in order to figure things out. They had to get in a meeting 1 week in advance, 2 weeks in advance. They had to go to a library. Now all of that is sitting inside your hands, literally sitting inside your hands. And the extent to which you can use it, there's no limit. You're going to a meeting. I've done this before. You're going to a meeting, work with ChatGPT, put yourself in the shoes of the person you're going to have the meeting with, and ask ChatGPT what's going on, what will be going on through his mind. And it will say something like, as an AI, I cannot tell you what will be going through on his mind. But probably, but probably this is what's going to be going on through his mind, and he'll be evaluating to see whether he can trust you, whether he can do this to you. I say, okay, now that we know that, what can I do in order to improve my standing with him and his impression of me when I go in? You know, I had, and she knows this story, so it's okay for me to tell it online. I was in dialogue with a senior vice president from MasterCard. Okay, and she had contacted me to take my training. And I do one of my trainings. So I do training for large groups of people. I do training for corporates, but I also do training for executives. And in the executives, there's only 6 people in the room, only 6 executives in the room. The time is much shorter. It's more condensed, more personalized, and so on. So she asked me a question, and I wrote her a super long email because that's just my nature. I want to be thorough and so on. And I have an AI tool that looks at the LinkedIn profile, and based on the profile identifies what type of personality they are, and therefore based on that personality how you should write to them.
Oh,
exactly, right? So in the end, the AI told me that, listen, don't write this long email. You're gonna lose her. Keep it short. Keep it short, direct, be confident, be assertive, blah 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 blah. So I took this whole email and I just shortened it down to like 2 or 3 lines with bullet points and like that. You know, I removed the, hey, how are you? You know, I hope you're doing, I removed all of this.
value adding.
None of it, right? And sent the email. And she ended up responding well. She came, she took the course and so on. Inside the course, I was teaching this and I gave this to her as an example. And she herself, she said to me, wow, that's really impressive. And it was 100% correct. If you had sent me a long email, I wouldn't have even read the first line. Because if you read the first line, it means you're going to read the rest of the thing. She goes, I wouldn't have even read it. I would have said, I'll read it later, and I would have never read it. So you can even, when you talk about as an entrepreneur, now you want to understand, let's say, for example, now I'm building a business. I'm building an AI institute at the moment, right? So I want to attract the best brains. And the way that you attract the best brains is by giving them a share of this thing that they're going to help you build. So I went to ChatGPT and I said, this is the situation, help me to understand it. And it said, what you're talking about is called an ESOP, an employee share ownership program. Now, I've never heard of ESOP before because I've never worked for anybody else. If you worked for somebody else, you would have found out about it. But I never worked for anybody else, so I didn't know. So I said, okay, fantastic. Help me to plan out my ESOP. What are the different things I need to consider? And it started telling me, well, are you trying to keep people just to reach a certain goal because you want to exit at that stage, or are you trying to keep people for the long run? So not only is it teaching me about ESOPs, but it's also teaching me about ESOPs in the context of my specific situation. So something that previously would have taken me weeks, now I'm learning it within half an hour, 1 hour. Now, at that point, I'm not in a position to go and create an ESOP, but I am in a position to go and sit with a lawyer and talk about an ESOP without the lawyer without having to spend 10,000 whatever on the lawyer teaching me about ESOPs. So it goes into figuring out what business you're building. I had a friend of mine, I did an experiment with him and I said to him, listen, have you ever thought about opening a business? He goes, well, maybe. I said, listen, what's the business? He goes, if I was to, it would be an Islamic bookstore. Okay. I said, okay, let's speak to ChatGPT about this. After about 10 minutes, ChatGPT had figured out a concept that does not exist on the earth, at least to my knowledge, which is a family-oriented Islamic bookshop. Okay? So it's not like all these kind of classical books which just gather dust and they're for some scholars and muftis. No, you go into this place, it's like a playground. And all the books there are all child-oriented books. Because if you think about it, somebody who has a child and is trying to teach their kids about religion, what happens? They say, let's buy books that start with the ABC books and these are good customers to have. They're going to buy a book, they're going to buy a second, they're going to buy a third. I used to buy them for my kids. I used to buy like 20 books at a time. Every 2 weeks, we'll go and buy another 20 books. Do you know what I mean? So ChatGPT figured out the colors, figured out how to lay it out, the type of people you should employ there, the type of culture that you should have. Literally something that would have taken that aspiring entrepreneur 6 months, 1 year to conclude, ChatGPT's done it in 1 hour, 2 hours.
I'm so intrigued to understand how it's working. To give you an example, most entrepreneurs, they're driven by innovations and the great ideas in their minds. But when it comes to reality, we don't know whether this innovation or the problems that we're trying to solve, is it existing or not? How can we make sure that we are putting our effort in the right direction using ChatGPT?
As entrepreneurs?
Yes.
That's a very good question. ChatGPT can actually critique itself. So you can ask ChatGPT to give you something, whatever it is, let's say a business plan, and then you can say to, okay, who are the different types of people I should show this business plan to ensure that it's good? So it'll say, okay, you need to show it to a finance person, you need to show it to a marketer, you need to show it to a strategist, you need to show it to these 10 different people. You say, okay, I want you to act as person number one, act as that person and give me a critique of my plan. So it will give you a critique from that angle. Now you say, okay, thank you. Now act as person number 2 and give me a critique from that angle. And then you can say, okay, now that we have all of this critique, I want you to update the plan based on all of this critique. And now the plan becomes more and more robust. But at the end of it all, if you don't know what you're doing as an entrepreneur, go and put that in front of somebody with experience. Go and put it in front of a mentor and so on. And the mentor, of course, is going to be happy because you've brought something so robust and you're not wasting his time. All he has to do is check it. You know what I mean? So you still need humans in your life. You still need mentors and so on. But 90% of the work can actually be delegated and passed on to ChatGPT.
It's great. But another question is, how can we get into such details? Because again, some of the challenge that I see it from my experience, that getting the data, the
Okay.
availability of the data. Because sometimes, again, we have great ideas, we have great innovations, but when it comes, we need to assess the data somewhere. How can we get such details from ChatGPT?
So if we're talking about data, right? So for example, real-time data or up-to-date data, ChatGPT falls short. So ChatGPT, you have to understand, is a language model. It's good working with words. Once you start throwing numbers into the mix, it's not as good. And you have to be aware of that. So what happens typically is that if you want modern numbers, then you have to connect to the internet. There are other platforms which are even better than ChatGPT with regards to real-time data, like Perplexity. And there are plugins that are being developed for ChatGPT in order to integrate with the internet and so on. Where ChatGPT is really strong is in concepts, right? It's really strong in concept. So if you want to talk about human psychology, you want to talk about marketing, like these are all concepts. Its data cuts off in September 2021. So it doesn't know anything about the world after September 2021. So
What is the reason for that?
because it costs millions of dollars to update it. Each time you want to add one more piece of information with AI systems like this, you want to add just one more line of information, you have to retrain everything. I worked on an AI project last year, and this AI project was based on visual recognition. So for example, this painting that you have here, you can put a camera in front of it and it will recognize the painting. To just add one more painting, we have to retrain all of them. To get one more angle, you have to retrain all of it. It takes time, it takes money. And then when you're doing it with that much knowledge, it's expensive.
But I know that you're having more experience in that, but can't AI get some information or data somewhere and feed it directly, not to retrain it?
So that's exactly what's going on. That's exactly what's going on with these plugins, whereby it says, okay, this information is outside of my data set. It's outside of my knowledge set. So let me connect to the internet, grab it, and put it into this conversation. So that's already happening. The only problem is it's slow. So the way that I use ChatGPT and the way that I teach my students is I want it to work almost as fast as my brain, if not faster. And when it sits there connecting to the internet, clicking on another page, going to another page, coming back to this page, it will make you go crazy. And there are other platforms that do it much faster, like Perplexity. Perplexity, you can go in and explain it, and it will do all of its magic within just a few seconds.
So don't you think that in the near future that we can ask ChatGPT for our business model or our business plan and say, guys, we need the data. Can you give me a proposal on that? Is it a good penetration, competition?
Listen, did you watch Iron Man or the Marvel series with Iron Man? You know Tony Stark?
Yes.
And he has Jarvis?
Yes.
Okay. So if that's where this is all heading, you have to understand that ChatGPT is just version 0.1. If you go into the Marvel universe and he has Jarvis, it didn't start like that. It had to have started somewhere else. Well, I mean, Apple now, we're on like Apple iPhone 15. Okay, it started in 2007 with the first one. So the same thing, ChatGPT is the first version and it's leading towards Jarvis. So yes, all of these things will happen. It's just a matter of time. And each of these companies like Google and Microsoft, all they're doing on a day-to-day basis, this is now their sole purpose in life, is to look for all the shortcomings that are frustrating everybody and figure out ways to overcome those frustrations. Especially companies like Google, because what they've done, if you look at Google's entire money-making model is based on serving ads, right? And they make billions of dollars doing that. So if we can start to get our information from, and sorry, before I go into that, so what Google did was Google created all sorts of free apps, invested huge amounts of money and made them completely free. So we do our email, we do our maps, we do our documents, we do our spreadsheets, we do our searching. Everything is done within the Google ecosystem. And within that ecosystem, they show us the adverts. And they have, over the last 10, 20 years, taken so many steps to get us into the ecosystem and keep us inside the ecosystem. This is why when you search for something, traditionally, they try to give you the results inside the Google search page. They don't want you to click away, because as long as you stay inside, you'll see adverts. AI comes along, and there's a danger that we will leave this ecosystem. I myself hardly use Google search now. Hardly. I swear to you, hardly. I use it to get phone numbers, opening hours, and that's it. That's it. That's all I'm using it for. Okay, cinema timings, right? That's it. I'm not using it for anything else. So this is a big danger, and they understand this. So in the same way they gave us free email, free docs, free this, if they can also give us our free Jarvis, we get to stay in their ecosystem, and Jarvis will be able to also give us adverts for whatever. You see what I mean? So again, I forgot your question.
Let's move to another question.
Well, so this is the point. Now I remember, because Jarvis, right? You said, will we get to a point where we can say, here's my plan, give me X, Y, Z? 1000%. The question is when.
When do you think, based on the pace that we have?
At the moment, listen, this is when I'm doing some type of long writing, okay? What I'll do is I'll do the writing in ChatGPT, and then I will ask ChatGPT, I'll say to it, what statistics and other facts could I add to my writing to bring it to life? And it will say, oh, you should get the population of this, oh, you should get the growth rate of this, and whatever. I take all of those things and I take them to Perplexity, and I say, give me these things. Give me the population, give me the growth rate, give me this, give me that. And it will give me all of those things. I'll bring those things back to ChatGPT. I say, here are the things you asked for. Please update my document to include them. Okay? So how difficult is it for OpenAI to just do that themselves? It's not difficult. This is why OpenAI has made possible the concept of plugins, because it's through all of these plugins, the stronger the connection gets, the smoother it will be, and then eventually it will become just a native part of the AI. So not that long.
Maybe 1 year, you think?
Nobody knows, but it's already started. It's already started with the release of plugins and the ability to connect to the internet. It has already started.
One of the biggest resources that we have as an entrepreneur, and very valuable resource, which is time, right? How can I use ChatGPT to be more effective in my time and manage my time with the value-adding activities in my business?
All right, I'm going to answer your question in a weird way.
Please.
All right. Like my father, I'm a workaholic. Historically, I'm a workaholic. And if I didn't get enough work done in the day, I can't sleep at night because my body hasn't received its dose of work. Okay, you sound like you know what I'm talking about. All right, in the last 2 months, I've started dance classes. In the last 2 months, I go back into boxing. In the last 2 months, I learned to start playing pool with my nephews. In the last 2 months, I've been to the cinema more times than in the last 2 years. I have my kids coming to spend 3 weeks with me. From next week, actually, they arrive on Saturday to spend 3 weeks with me.
Wow.
Right? And I'm excited to have them. I'm so excited to have them.
Oh.
Because the way in which my time is being, and I'm sleeping at nighttime, right? Why? Because I am now getting more done. I'm now getting more done in 1 day than I used to get done in 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
What are those tasks that you were spending a lot and ChatGPT helped you?
Everything. What does an email, a blog post, and a report have in common?
Writing,
right? Words, language. Okay. When we think, right, let's say now you want to figure out a podcast. I see you have these questions in front of you, yeah? So these questions, they started in your mind. And they started as ideas. You had one idea, which is, okay, the efficiency of ChatGPT. Let me turn that into a question. Okay, what other questions could there be? Right? Okay, so in your mind, you're using language. You're using words. You're trying to bring these words together. You could take the same few questions you have and go into ChatGPT and say to it, I have a ChatGPT expert coming to my podcast tomorrow. Give me a list of questions for me to consider. It will give you the questions, they'll be boring. You say, no, I need some interesting questions. These questions everybody is asking. I want questions that are going to make my audience sit on the edge of their seats. So that thing which took you 15 minutes before to figure out the question is now being done in 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes. So it's not just helping you to write, it's helping you to think. Do you understand?
Mm-hmm.
This is the angle that I come at. This is why I say that it amplifies your cognitive abilities whilst reducing your cognitive load. And suddenly you chill out. Because all of that stuff that used to, I mean, let's just imagine you're working and you're sitting there on your laptop and your wife is telling you, come on, dinner is ready and you need to get this thing done. Because if I don't get it done, I'm in the zone now.
Yeah.
If I get out of the zone.
Squeezing my mind a lot.
Exactly.
Searching, trying to find.
So now what happens is, no, okay, first of all, you don't need to do that anymore. You got it done like this already. Then it's like, okay, I'll just leave the laptop here. I'll come back. I'm still in the zone. All you do is open the laptop, see the conversation where it was, and just press enter and ChatGPT leads the way. My turning point with what was my turning point? My turning point with ChatGPT was when I had to make a business plan. Okay, this is going back to the beginning of, I think it was the beginning of January or the end of December. I had to make a business plan. And I was going from London up to Manchester to see my children and spend the weekend with them. And I had intended I was going to spend this weekend making this business plan. And I forgot the damn charger for my laptop in London. Now, you've got it in your mind, like you planned the week before, you planned the week after, the mornings I'm going to do that, and I didn't have the charger. So I opened ChatGPT and I said to it, I said, listen, you and me are going to have a long conversation. I'm going to ask you questions, you're going to give me answers. You are going to ask me questions, I'm going to give you answers. And then we're going to compile all of this and turn it into a plan. I've made many business plans in my life, many.
Mm.
Most business plans are done by force. You're forced to make a business plan, right? You have to submit it to the bank. You have to submit it to an investor. You have to submit it to somebody else. And if you didn't have somebody else, you wouldn't make the plan. You've just got your idea. You believe in your idea. My idea is going to succeed. Let's go. That business plan turned out to be the single best business plan I have ever made in my entire life. If I had been pushed to make that business plan without ChatGPT, it would have taken me a month. I got it done 2 mornings, 2 evenings, and then 3-4 hours after that. And in the end, and this is to show you how good the business plan was, it was so good that I decided not to do the business.
And was over-promising?
No, what it was what I thought was going to be simple.
Mm-hmm.
After I thoroughly planned it, I realized this is not simple. For me to have the impact I want to have with this business and turn it into the global phenomenon that I'm expecting it to be requires much more time, much more money, much more involvement of people. I was being over ambitious because we have, as human beings, especially entrepreneurs, we underestimate the work that needs to go in and we overestimate how easily it will happen. Yeah. And I got caught out. And in the end, I decided I will do it, just not this year. I've shelved it. I have the plan there. Everything is fully documented. And we'll talk about it in 2000.
Anyway, you saved like 28 days if you stayed like one.
That's the point. That's the point. And that's why if you ask me, what do you use it? Literally everything. I mean, even personal stuff. I have a nephew. Everybody was at the dinner table. They're all joking. I said, why is everybody joking? He says, because he has to have a blood test tomorrow and he has a phobia of injections. Okay. So my brother-in-law, he jokingly said, Fahad, you deal with him. So I told him, okay, join me after dinner. Let's sit. We sat down. We had a long conversation with ChatGPT. The result of the conversation was we went to the pharmacy. We bought an injection. We came back to the house. He put the injection in his hand. He felt the injection with his fingers. And then he had to start reciting affirmations that this injection is good for me. This injection is for my benefit. Billions of people use these injections every day for their benefit, and it will benefit me whilst holding the injection. And in the end, he went for his injection, and now, by the grace of God, he's overcome his phobia.
And it was suggested by ChatGPT.
It was not that specific instructions. What we did was we said, listen, first of all, is it normal for someone to have, is there such a thing? It's like, yeah, and even gave a name. There's a name for it. Okay, I said, okay. So who are the people that could help us with this? And he said, okay, you could get help with a hypnotherapist. You can get help with a psychotherapist. I said, okay, so let's just imagine we went to a hypnotherapist. What would he do? And it said, oh, the hypnotherapist would do X, Y, Z. So we wrote that down on the side. We said, okay, this is what we need to do. I said, okay, if we go to a psychotherapist, what would he do? He said, this is what he would do. So we kind of stitched this all together and said, okay, this is something that we can do. Let's go do it. Now, I'm not advising, for all of your watchers and listeners, please respect your doctors, respect your therapists, etc. But I have sufficient experience with therapists, and I have sufficient for something this simple. It's not a problem, And if you try to ask ChatGPT, ChatGPT will not give you this information. But because I know how to play with ChatGPT, I'll give you another story. I mean, many people, I've now told this story to many people. I was in desperate need of yoga. I felt, I need to be sitting down working on this laptop for so long, so many months. I need to get healthy again. And I booked in for the yoga, 7 p.m. 7 p.m. came and I just didn't go. So I went and had a chat with ChatGPT and I said, listen, this is what happened. And ChatGPT, long story short, at the end of the conversation, 15-minute conversation, 20 minutes, we concluded, me and ChatGPT, we concluded that I had a fear of judgment. Okay, why? Because you go to a yoga thing, all the people that are already there, they've been going to that yoga class for weeks or months. They all know each other. They all know the coach knows them. They all know the movements. They all know, and you're coming in, you don't know anything. So is your clothes the right clothes? When he says lift your leg, does that mean lift it forward? Does it mean lift it backwards? What does it mean? And so you have these fears, they go through your mind, which is people are going to look at me.
You're not aware of that.
You're not aware of it, but it runs your life. But for me, I was so upset. I had this conversation. And then I said, I had to continue the conversation. Okay, so how do I deal with this? I said, listen, different people are good at different things. And everybody starts somewhere. So those people in the room, first of all, they may not be good at what you are good at. So I was like, okay, that's true. Yeah, that's right. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a ChatGPT. Yeah, okay, that's true. Yeah. And they all started somewhere as well. So there's nothing wrong with it. You just have to accept that reality. And the funny thing is, I went to the next yoga session. And the funny thing is that I did make the mistakes. And I did dress weirdly in comparison. But I was okay with it. Do you know what I mean? And I use it every day now. I mean, I used it in the last few days to help me understand some of the ways that I think. Why do I think that way? So I've gone to ChatGPT and I say, listen, this has happened. Why am I thinking like this? And then we have a conversation. I start to understand myself better. Do you see what I mean? Now, I do have therapists. I have 2 therapists in my life. But that doesn't stop me from wanting to learn myself in order to become a better person as a human being. Do you know what I mean?
Unleash is the bridge between my purpose and my mission. And my mission is unleashing the human greatness to its utmost potential.